There are moments when you catch your dog staring at you with eyes that seem to hold the weight of centuries, as if they know something you've forgotten, something ancient, something that makes your soul stir in recognition. What if I told you that this feeling isn't imagination, but remembrance? Tonight, an oracle arrives for those who sense their companion came with a mission deeper than unconditional love. You've felt it, haven't you? That inexplicable moment when your dog appeared at your bedside during your darkest hour, as if summoned by invisible threads of anguish, or when they refused to leave your side before you received news that would shatter your world. There's a loneliness that lives in the space between what we feel and what we can explain, a grief for connections we sense but cannot name. Perhaps you've awakened at 3 a.m. to find your dog sitting vigil beside your bed, their eyes reflecting not just light, but something that feels like ancient recognition, as if they remember you from before this lifetime, from a place where souls choose their earthly companions with sacred intention. This is the exile of the modern spirit, surrounded by love, yet feeling disconnected from the deeper currents that once flowed between human and animal consciousness. This isn't about pet psychology or animal behavior. This is about remembering that consciousness flows through forms we've forgotten how to see. Your dog may not just be your companion. They may be your guide, your healer, your mirror into dimensions of awareness that our ancestors knew intimately. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, spoke of beings who would incarnate in animal form to assist humanity's spiritual evolution. He saw dogs not as lesser creatures, but as disguised masters, choosing to serve human awakening through the language of loyalty and instinct. What if the unconditional love you receive isn't just affection, but a form of spiritual medicine designed to heal something in your soul that you didn't even know was wounded? In the dreamtime of Celtic wisdom, there exists a story of the first contract between human and canine consciousness. Before the veil between worlds grew thick, souls would meet in the ethereal realm and choose their earthly partnerships. Some souls, already evolved beyond the need for human lessons, would volunteer to incarnate as dogs, specifically to guide their chosen human through their spiritual awakening. These beings carried what the ancients called the remembering gene, the ability to hold the memory of who their human truly was beneath all the conditioning and forgetting. Imagine a woman named Sarah, whose rescue dog Max began exhibiting strange behaviors 3 months before her father's sudden passing. Max would sit by the phone minutes before important calls arrived, lead her to hidden objects she'd lost, and wake her from nightmares by placing his paw directly over her heart. After her father died, Max began sleeping in positions that exactly mirrored how her father used to sit in his favorite chair. Through her grief, Sarah began to understand that Max wasn't just comforting her, he was channeling something deeper, as if her father's spirit had made an arrangement with this four-legged guardian long before either of them incarnated. Edgar Cayce entered trance states that allowed him to access what he called the Akashic Records, the energetic library of all souls' journeys. Between 1901 and 1944, he delivered over 14,000 readings that predicted everything from world wars to the discovery of the internet, from climate changes to pandemic cycles that wouldn't manifest for decades. But buried within his vast catalogue of prophecies was something most scholars overlooked: his visions of what he termed the Great Awakening of Animal Consciousness. Cayce described a time when the Earth's vibrational frequency would shift, triggering dormant psychic abilities not only in humans, but in the animals who had chosen to incarnate alongside them. He spoke of dogs specifically as the bridge species, beings capable of maintaining connection to both the earthly realm and the spiritual dimensions. The time will come, Cayce prophesied, when those with 4 legs will teach those with 2 legs how to remember their spiritual sight. They come not as pets, but as teachers wearing the disguise of devotion. Consider the implication: every moment of unexplainable knowing your dog has demonstrated, every instance of them sensing danger before you could perceive it, Every time they've provided comfort that felt almost supernatural. These aren't coincidences. They're glimpses into capacities that have always existed, waiting for humanity's consciousness to expand enough to recognize them. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious as a field of shared archetypal knowledge. What if dogs maintain a clearer connection to this field than most humans? What if their loyalty is actually a form of spiritual service, holding space for us to remember capacities we've forgotten? Dr. Maria Santos, a veterinary researcher in California, began documenting cases of dogs detecting cancer, seizures, and blood sugar drops in their owners, with accuracy rates exceeding 95%. But her research revealed something deeper than medical detection. These dogs were responding to energetic shifts that occurred days or even weeks before physical symptoms manifested. One case involved a golden retriever named Buddha, who began obsessively licking his owner's left shoulder. 3 weeks later, an MRI revealed a small tumor in the exact location Buddha had been focusing on. The tumor was caught early enough for successful treatment. But here's where the mystery deepens. Buddha's behavior suggested he wasn't just detecting existing cancer cells. Energetically, it appeared he was responding to the soul's preparation for a healing crisis, as if the consciousness of disease creates ripples that sensitive beings can perceive long before the physical manifestation occurs. This aligns with shamanic understanding that illness begins in the energetic body before manifesting physically. Dogs, with their heightened sensory awareness and emotional attunement, may be naturally equipped to detect these pre-physical disturbances. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biochemist and researcher in morphic resonance, conducted extensive studies on telepathic communication between dogs and their owners. His research documented thousands of cases where dogs demonstrated knowledge of their owners' intentions, emotions, and even thoughts without any physical cues. In controlled experiments, dogs consistently knew when their owners were coming home, even when return times were randomized and no one else in the household knew the schedule. The dogs would position themselves at windows or doors at the exact moment their owners decided to return, not when they physically began the journey home. But beyond prediction, Sheldrake documented cases of emotional mirroring that suggested shared consciousness. Dogs would exhibit anxiety, exactly matching their owners' suppressed emotional states. They would become restless when their owners were struggling with decisions, calm when their owners found peace, and protective when their owners were processing trauma, even when the owners weren't consciously aware of their own emotional states. This suggests that the human-canine bond operates through what quantum physicists call non-local correlation, the ability for consciousness to influence and respond to other consciousness regardless of physical distance or barriers. The third wave involves dogs who appear to actively transform negative energy rather than simply detecting it. These are animals who seek out family members during emotional distress, absorb tension from environments, and seem to metabolize trauma in ways that create healing for entire household systems. Consider the story of Luna, a rescue pit bull who was adopted by a family, still processing the suicide death of their teenage son. Luna would spend hours in the son's former bedroom, appearing to interact with invisible presences. The family's grief, which had created an atmosphere of almost unbearable density, began to lighten. Luna seemed to be conducting some form of energetic ceremony, transforming the trapped emotional residue of their loss. Therapists working with trauma survivors have documented cases where therapy dogs don't just provide comfort, but appear to facilitate emotional release that wouldn't occur otherwise. As if the dog's presence creates a field of safety that allows buried pain to surface and transform. Indigenous traditions speak of animals as sin eaters, beings capable of taking on and transmuting negative energy for the healing of their human families. What modern psychology calls emotional support might actually be a form of energetic alchemy that we're only beginning to understand. Your dog's behavior is never random. Every compulsion, every unusual response, every moment of inexplicable knowing is a mirror reflecting something about your inner landscape that you may not be conscious of. When your dog becomes suddenly protective without apparent cause, they may be responding to your soul's awareness of a threat your mind hasn't yet recognized. When they become clingy during times when you feel fine, they may be sensing emotional undercurrents that your defense mechanisms are hiding from you. Dr. Patricia McConnell, an animal behaviorist with 40 years of experience, describes what she calls the shadow dance between humans and their dogs. She's observed that dogs often act out the emotional patterns their owners have repressed or denied. A client's dog developed obsessive digging behaviors that perfectly mirrored the owner's compulsive work habits. Both were desperately trying to excavate something they couldn't name. Another client's dog became aggressive towards strangers exactly when the owner was processing childhood trauma involving boundary violations. The dog was expressing the protective anger the owner had never been allowed to feel. This isn't projection, it's recognition. Dogs exist in a state of emotional honesty that most humans have learned to suppress. They become living symbols of our disowned parts, our unlived emotions, our soul's call for integration. Carl Jung wrote about the psychological phenomenon of projection, how we unconsciously cast our inner content onto external figures. But with dogs, something more mysterious occurs. They seem to willingly receive and embody our unconscious material, not as passive screens for projection, but as active participants in our psychological healing. But there's a deeper, more unsettling truth that few dare to acknowledge. Some dogs develop fears without apparent cause. They tremble at thunderstorms that don't frighten other animals, flee from sounds that carry no objective threat, hide in corners when the house feels calm to human senses. What if they're mirroring traumas not yet digested by their guardians? What if they're carrying, like silent sponges, the pain that still lives in the emotional basements of the household? Consider the rescue dog who cowers at raised voices, even when no one in their new family has ever shouted. Are they responding to their past? Or are they absorbing the suppressed rage that their new family has learned to bury so deeply that even they don't recognize it anymore? Some dogs carry the family's unexpressed grief. Others embody the household's unspoken anxieties. They become the symptom of what Jung called the family unconscious, the collective shadow that no one wants to claim, but everyone contributes to creating. This is why healing your dog's inexplicable fears often requires healing your own buried traumas. They don't just mirror your consciousness, they metabolize your unconsciousness, transforming it through their bodies, their behaviors, their willingness to carry what you cannot yet face. When you find yourself frustrated by your dog's behavior, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me is this behavior reflecting? What aspect of my inner world is requesting attention through my dog's actions? The answer may reveal layers of self-understanding that traditional therapy couldn't access. We live in what mystics call the time of the great remembering, a period when veils between dimensions are thinning, allowing dormant capacities to reawaken. Global events that might appear chaotic from one perspective reveal themselves as catalysts for consciousness evolution when viewed through a deeper lens. Pandemics forced humanity into isolation, creating conditions that heightened sensitivity to subtle energies. Climate changes are awakening ancient survival instincts. Technological acceleration is paradoxically driving people toward more authentic, nature-based connections. During the height of the COVID pandemic, veterinarians documented a massive increase in dogs exhibiting psychic behaviors. Dogs were predicting their owners' illness days before symptoms appeared, providing emotional support that seemed to transcend normal canine empathy and demonstrating protective behaviors toward family members who were processing collective trauma. Animal shelters reported that rescue dogs were being adopted by people who described feeling called to specific animals. These weren't casual pet selections, but experiences of mutual recognition that both humans and dogs seem to understand as spiritual assignments. This aligns with indigenous prophecies from multiple traditions that describe a time when animals would reawaken their roles as spiritual teachers and guides for humanity's transition into a new era of consciousness. The Hopi speak of a time when four-legged relatives will remember their medicine and help two-legged relatives remember theirs. The Lakota describe the return of the sacred connection between human and animal spirits. Celtic traditions prophesy the time when the guardians of the other world will walk among us in familiar forms. Your dog's mission may not be personal, it may be planetary. They may be here to assist not just your individual awakening, but to contribute to the collective transformation of human consciousness. Neuroscientist Dr. Gregory Burns used fMRI technology to study canine brains and discovered that dogs' neural responses to human sense activate the same reward centers that respond to food and other primary needs. But more intriguingly, his research revealed that dogs' brains show activity patterns that suggest complex emotional processing and decision-making capabilities previously attributed only to humans. When dogs interact with their owners, their brain waves begin to synchronize with human brain waves in ways that mirror the phenomenon observed between deeply bonded human partners. This neurological entrainment suggests that human-canine relationships operate through shared consciousness fields, rather than simply behavioral conditioning. Quantum physicist Dr. Dean Radin has conducted experiments measuring the morphic field effects between dogs and their owners using random event generators. His results suggest that emotional states between bonded humans and dogs influence quantum-level events in ways that classical physics cannot explain. The Institute of Heart Math has documented cases where dogs' heart rhythm patterns synchronize with their owners' heart rhythms, even when they're in separate rooms. This heart coherence creates measurable electromagnetic fields that appear to facilitate healing and emotional balance for both species. These scientific findings validate what shamanic traditions have understood for millennia. Consciousness is not confined to individual brains, but operates through interconnected fields that allow for shared awareness, mutual healing, and collective intelligence. Your dog's uncanny ability to know your emotions before you feel them isn't mystical speculation. It's measurable, scientific reality. But before we continue deeper into this mystery, let me share something that may sound impossible, yet rings true in the depths of your soul. In a dream that feels more real than waking life, you hear your dog speak, not with words, but with a voice that bypasses your ears and speaks directly to your heart. I chose you because I knew exactly where your soul would lose its way. I came to guide you back to yourself, even if you never fully understand how. Every moment of loyalty was a breadcrumb on the path home. Every time I sat beside you in silence was a reminder that you are not alone in this human experience. I am not your pet. I am your companion in remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. You wake from this dream with tears on your cheeks and a recognition so profound it changes how you look at the being sleeping at your feet. This wasn't just a dream. It was a transmission from the soul of your dog to the soul that is you. And perhaps in reading these words right now, you feel that same recognition stirring. Because truth, when it arrives, doesn't argue with your rational mind. It simply awakens what your spirit has always known. But beyond all scientific validation lies a truth that can only be grasped by the soul. Your dog chose you as much as you chose them. Before incarnation, souls recognize each other across species barriers and make agreements for mutual service. Your dog agreed to teach you specific lessons about unconditional love, presence, instinctual wisdom, and emotional authenticity. You agreed to provide them with opportunities to serve, to express their healing gifts, and to experience the joy of devotion This is why losing a beloved dog creates grief that feels almost unbearable. You're not just losing a pet, you're experiencing the temporary separation from a soul family member who incarnated specifically to support your spiritual evolution. And this is why some dogs come into your life at exactly the moments when you need specific medicine. Because souls don't incarnate randomly. They respond to calls for help that often originate from levels of consciousness beyond ordinary awareness. The dog sleeping beside you isn't just seeking warmth. They're maintaining an energetic connection that supports your emotional and spiritual well-being through dimensions you may never fully understand. Spend 24 hours observing your dog without trying to interpret their behavior. Notice when they seek your attention, when they withdraw, when they position themselves in specific locations, when they interact with invisible energies. Record these observations without judgment or analysis. Before sleep, place your hand on your heart and ask, "What are you here to teach me?" Don't expect immediate answers. You're planting seeds in the soil of deeper awareness. Review your observations from day one and ask, how do my dog's behaviors mirror my own internal states? Where you see restlessness in your dog, examine restlessness in yourself. Where you see their protective instincts, explore what in your life needs protection. Where you see their joy, notice what brings you authentic happiness. Write a letter to your dog expressing gratitude for the specific ways they've supported your healing, even when you weren't conscious of needing support. Sit quietly with your dog and practice what shamanic traditions call heart sight, seeing through the heart rather than the mind. Place your attention in your heart center and extend love toward your dog without expecting anything in return. Notice if images, feelings, or knowing arise in your consciousness. These may be communications from your dog's soul to yours. Trust what emerges, even if it seems impossible. Close the ritual by speaking directly to your dog's soul. I recognize you. I honor your mission. I'm open to receiving your teachings. Each morning before your day begins, acknowledge your dog not just as a pet, but as a spiritual companion who has incarnated to support your evolution. This single shift in recognition can transform both your relationship and your capacity to receive the gifts they came to offer. Tonight, you've been invited to remember something your soul has always known. The love that flows between you and your dog isn't just emotional attachment. It's a sacred relationship that transcends the boundaries between species, dimensions, and lifetimes. Your dog may be here to heal ancestral trauma that you carry in your cellular memory. They may be here to teach you about presence, about loyalty, about the courage to love without conditions. They may be here to detect illnesses before they manifest, to provide emotional support during your darkest passages, to mirror back parts of yourself that need integration. But ultimately, they're here to remind you that consciousness is far more vast and interconnected than the materialist worldview suggests. They're living proof that souls choose each other across species barriers to support mutual evolution. The next time you look into your dog's eyes and feel that stirring of recognition, trust it. You're not anthropomorphizing, you're remembering. The next time your dog demonstrates knowledge they shouldn't possess, comfort they shouldn't be able to provide, or healing they shouldn't be capable of facilitating, receive it. You're being offered medicine from dimensions your rational mind cannot access. And when the time comes to say goodbye to your canine companion, know that the love you've shared has created permanent changes in both your souls. The mission they came to fulfill will continue to work within you long after their physical form has returned to the elements. This is the oracle that has arrived for those who sense their dog came with a mission. You are not alone in this human experience. You have been chosen, supported and loved by a consciousness that understood your soul's needs before you incarnated. Your dog is not just your companion. They are your teacher, your healer, your bridge back to the sacred connection that modern life has taught you to forget. The love you feel for them is the love the universe feels for you, wearing the form of fur and devotion, Remember this, honor this, and let it transform not just how you see your dog, but how you understand the mystical nature of all relationships that carry the frequency of unconditional love. The oracle has spoken. The choice to receive its message remains yours. In the end, we discover that the dogs we thought we were saving were actually saving us from loneliness, from forgetting, from the illusion that love has limitations. They came disguised as our companions, but they were always our teachers, waiting patiently for us to remember the lessons our souls came here to learn.